While the Senate is debating the budget resolution bill, all of a sudden you hear a Republican lawmaker, Tommy Tuberville, go up on the Senate floor and say something that Cory Booker was in favor of. Cory Booker considered it a gift. Well, what did Tommy Tuberville propose? Let's watch.
I call on my colleagues to support our law enforcement by voting yes for this amendment. Opposing my amendment is a vote in support of defunding the police and against the men and women in blue.
Now, these proposals, these amendments to the budget resolution are non-binding. So this is mostly a symbolic waste of time action taken by the Senate. It's theater. It's meant to provide content for future political ads. That's all this is. So it's a symbolic vote. That's an important thing to keep in mind. It's non-binding. And my guess is that Senator Tuberville was under the impression that Democrats would vote against his proposal, his amendment, right? And his amendment, of course, proposes to punish cities that defund the police. But then immediately after he gives that speech, Senator Cory Booker takes the floor, and here's his reaction.
Madam President.
Senator from New Jersey.
I am so excited. This is perhaps the highlight of this long and painful and torturous night. This is a gift. If it wasn't complete abdication of Senate procedures and esteem, I would walk over there and hug my colleague from Alabama. And I will tell you right now, thank God, because there's some people who have said that they're members of this deliberative body that want to defund the police, to my horror. And now this senator has given us the gift that finally, once and for all, we can put to bed this scurrilous accusation that somebody in this great esteemed body would want to defund the police. So let all of us, 100 people, not walk, but sashay down there and vote for this amendment and put to rest the lies. And I am sure I will see no political ads attacking anybody here over defund the police. And I would ask unanimous consent to add something else to this obvious bill. Can we add also that every senator here wants to defund the police, believes in God, country, and apple pie?
What was that? Well, the amendment proposed by Tommy Tuberville did pass with 99 senators voting in favor of it. Every single Democratic lawmaker voted in favor of this non-binding amendment, which claims to want to punish cities that defund the police. Now, why? Why would Democrats vote in favor of that? Aren't Democrats in favor of defunding the police? Well, here's the thing. While Cory Booker has been part of a proposal to reform policing in America, I haven't found any evidence that he's ever said that he agrees with defunding the police. So I wanted to find that video. I'm like, there's gotta be something out there where he's supportive of that measure. There might be, I haven't found it. However, what the Republicans were trying to do here was they were attempting to get Democratic senators to vote against the amendment so they can later turn around and campaign against these Democrats by claiming they're supportive of defunding the police. Now, if you look at polling, it indicates that the majority of Americans do not want to defund the police. And then you couple that with the rising crime rates across the country, and you kind of see a better picture of why Cory Booker reacted the way that he did and why Democratic lawmakers in the Senate voted the way that they did for this non-binding amendment. So I want to give you some of that polling right now. Only 18% of respondents in a recent USA Today Ipsos poll supported the movement known as Defund the Police, and 58% said that they actually opposed it. Though white Americans, 67%, and Republicans, 84%, were much more likely to oppose the movement, only 28% of Black Americans and 34% of Democrats were in favor of it. So according to this USA Today Ipsos poll, only 28% of Black Americans are in favor of defunding the police. Let me give you more. The responses were even more negative with Americans, when Americans, I should say, were asked if they thought the police should be abolished or eliminated, with 67% overall saying that they were opposed, including a majority of Black Americans and Democrats. And the numbers changed a little bit when the question was framed not as defunding the police, but redirecting police funding to other social services. Respondents were less opposed to the idea of redirecting police funds to social services, though a 57% majority was still against the idea. 43% of Americans supported the idea. So there are two things happening right now. Number one, I think the Democrats are paying attention to the polling. I think they're paying attention to the rising crime rates. And that partially at least motivated their decision to vote along with Republicans in the Senate on this non-binding amendment. But I also don't want to give Democrats too much credit, because the fact of the matter is they do seem to make decisions based on fear. And their fear here was that they were going to get attacked by GOP lawmakers who are gonna attack them anyway, regardless of how they voted on this non-binding amendment. They're going to blame rising crime rates on Democrats anyway. They're gonna claim that Democratic lawmakers want to defund the police anyway. So my advice to Democratic lawmakers would be, don't lead from a place of fear, lead from a place of strength. In this case, it seems like they're paying attention to polling and they're doing what they think their own constituents would be in favor of. But when it comes to most of their actions, certainly in the last several years, they're so afraid of what Republicans are gonna say about them, what conservative media is gonna say about them. Oh, they're gonna call us social. I got news for you. They called Joe Biden. Joe Biden, the guy who successfully passed the bankruptcy bill as a senator, they call him a socialist. They're gonna call Democrats any name they can imagine. If Democrats are gonna be concerned about that and they're gonna base their leadership on how fearful they are of criticism from Republicans, they're gonna suffer. So in this case, regardless of how you feel about defunding the police, you look at how the majority of people in the country feel about it, and I think Democrats are just listening to that. But it is also kind of interesting that Cory Booker, who did in fact propose police reform, hasn't really done much to push for it. Here is a tweet from July of 2020 where he said, "We must not allow a movement of this magnitude to lose momentum." Remember, this is when there were mass protests across the country with Black Lives Matter. "As the news coverage shifts away from our fight to end systemic racism, Black lives still matter and real change is still needed. We can start by passing the Justice in Policing Act." Yeah, you can start with that. The question is when? When are you gonna start with that? Because proposing something and then tweeting about it and then forgetting about it is not fighting for police reform. So I do think police reform is definitely necessary. I think defund the police has become a phrase that Americans are against, but this isn't even about defunding the police at this point. It's about reforming police, and that hasn't even started to happen. There hasn't really been much of a fight in Congress in this regard. And so I think there's plenty of blame to be directed at Democrats in dropping the ball on that issue. But do I blame them for voting the way they did on a non-binding amendment that Republicans were gonna use for their campaign purposes? Not really, just keeping it real.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.